Surging Sparks has introduced new decks like Pikachu EX or Ceruledge, and even improved existing decks like Goldango or Regidrago. But I'm not seeing a lot of mentions of one card that has two very interesting attacks. So welcome back to another video. Today we're playing a very satisfying deck that I like to call the Dark Knight. And I'm saying satisfying because of Hydreigon's two moves here, Crashing Headbutt and Obsidian. So Crashing Headbutt will do 200 damage for only 2 energy and discard the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, which is not really enough to deck them out, but it's enough to cause them problems, which is nice. And Obsidian can do 130 damage to 3 different Pokemon, so the one in the active slot right in front of you, as well as 2 benched Pokemon. And this one can be sneaky. I've learned that a lot of people don't see that coming a lot of the time, so you can put them on kind of a 2-move counter if they don't take care of your Hydreigon. So while Hydreigon EX is the main attacker of the deck, we also have Pecharunt EX in here as your endgame win condition. So the main reason for Pecharunt in here is to be able to switch dark Pokemon in and out of the active, to poison your active, to be able to do more damage with Binding Mochi, as we'll see in a little bit. But it also has this Irritated Outburst move for only 2 energy, and towards the end of the game, if your opponent has taken 5 of their prize cards, that'll do up to 300 damage for, again, only 2 dark energy. So that's huge for coming or for closing out some of the games. We also have a ton of draw support in here with Rotom V in the early game. We have a Cleffa as something for some stability kind of mid-game, makes you can draw up to 7 cards and not give up a 2-prizer. We also have Pidgeot as something we'll want to set up early on to be able to search cards. And that's most of the Pokemon. Of course, a Fezandipiti and a Lumineon are pretty standard. And I did include one Zweilous in here, so I wouldn't have to always use Rare Candy, but sometimes we can get away with that 3-stage evolution. Moving down to some of the trainer cards, I've found a Lost Vacuum to be really helpful in a lot of decks for getting rid of ace specs or for getting rid of stadiums. There's a lot of Area 0 underdepths these days. So a lot of decks I'm seeing are leaving out a Lost Vacuum, but I find that very helpful. A couple Dark Patches, one Earthen Vessel, a couple Nest Balls, a Night Stretcher. Counter Catcher is really helpful. Up here I have 2 because you'll kind of want to play from behind in a couple of these matches, as we'll point out here pretty soon. Some Buddy-Buddy Poffins. What else is in here? The Tera Orb is a newer card in Surging Sparks where you can search up a Tera Pokemon. I switched out 1 Ultra Ball, so 3 Ultra Ball and 1 Tera Orb for that, so I don't always have to give up 2 cards, or I don't have to discard 2 cards to be able to use that Tera Orb and find a Hydreigon. I put in a Collapsed Stadium to be able to get rid of our Rotom or Fezandipiti if it's a liability on the bench. 4 Arven so we can get our rare candies and our tool cards. Only 1 Boss's Orders, a Crispin to be able to assign some energy. So that can, put up to 2 energy on a Pokemon in 1 turn, which is helpful if you put 1 directly on it and then 1 into your hand to attach. 2 Iono, 1 Professor Turo, also to get rid of something that's a liability on your bench. The Binding Mochi, which we mentioned a moment ago, so if you switch in a Hydreigon from your bench, it becomes poisoned if you use Pecharunt to do so, and then it can do 40 more damage. So with its first move up here, Crashing Headbutt, doing 200, there are a lot of Pokemon that have 220 or 230 HP, so it's really helpful if you're going against like an Ogerpon EX or something like that, or a lot of the bench kind of support Pokemon like Fezandipiti has 210 to get that extra 40 damage to be able to knock out the thing in the active slot right in front of you. Oh, and also that applies to the Obsidian move, so that'll do up to 170. I believe that can knock out like a Radiant Charizard if that's active in front of you, or a Radiant Greninja, that might be 120, so maybe that's already in the Obsidian range, but there are a couple of things that are 150 or 160 HP that a Binding Mochi will take out and also do 130 to the bench. Down a little bit farther we have a Counter Gain, which is another newer card, so if you have more prize cards remaining, if you're playing from behind, it costs 1 colorless energy less, so you can get to your Obsidian move with 1 less energy. A Forest Seal Stone is really helpful because we're playing Rotom. And then Neo Upper Energy, so you can either use this to immediately to attack with your Crashing Headbutt for your first 2 energy, or I found it as kind of a sneaky ace spec to attack later on. Your opponent thinks you're going to have to attach 2 more energy to get to your Obsidian move, but you're able to search this up with Pidgeot, and then now you can do your Obsidian move, take out things on the bench that they weren't expecting to happen. And as a quick example of one of those sneaky moves you can pull off with Obsidian, right here you can see I've put some damage on their active Executor already, and I could not get to my Neo Upper Energy fast enough when I saw that they passed on their turn here. I had 4 prize cards remaining. Again, there's damage on the active already, and they have several things on their bench that are less than 130 HP. So we fly over, we have a Counter Gain since we're behind in prize cards, so that's 1 less energy on the active, and we're able to drop in Obsidian, I think we get emoted here because they didn't see that one coming. I think they thought they had another turn or two to get their last 3 prize cards. But yeah, we're able to take out the active and then both Noctowls on the bench, and there's the emote. So very sneaky and very fun. I've also seen a couple decks go pretty heavy on the dark energy and leave out the psychic and the steel energy, but I think they're helpful to have in here just so you have several ways to get to your obsidian move and you're not always stuck with your crashing headbutt. So that's a first look through this deck. We'll switch over to the full deck list and you can see the counts of everything and kind of more of a screenshot. So I will move my head out of the way so you can see the entire deck list here. As always, if you're enjoying these videos, please feel free to subscribe if you find yourself here often. And if we could get to 20 likes on today's video, that would make me most happy. We've gotten to 17 or 18 on a couple videos. And if we could just hit that 20 mark, it would make my day. So yeah, we'll jump over into the setup of this deck and then we'll jump into some gameplay after that. And here we are in the setup of our very first game. We're not going to watch this whole game because it doesn't go for too long here, but we get a pretty good setup and I want to show what that looks like. So we start with a Pidgey, which is a fine single prizer. If we're able to evolve this, we can get it out of the way. If they knock it out, it's not a 2 prizer, so it's not the biggest deal. We can put down another Pidgey that we just got because our opponent had to mulligan 4 times, which is huge. Great to have all the extra cards here. But since we're going first, we'll start out with a Buddy-Buddy Poffin. A lot of the times you'll put, a Pidgey down instead of that Cleffa, but that was already, that was what was in our hand, so we're going to go with that. We get 2 Deino down, 1 more Pidgey just in case they knock out this first one. And then we will go ahead and use an Ultra Ball because we're not going to be able to attack or evolve on this turn, so we want to get our Rotom V. We can toss a Dark Energy because that'll help us get it with our Dark Patch later on, so we're not too worried about that. We can go ahead and set up. We also have a Forest Seal Stone in our hand, so that's helpful as well. We'll attach an energy just so on our turn 2 we're 1 energy ahead, and if our opponent bosses that up, it's also not the biggest deal in the world, so not too worried about that, and we'll pass to our opponent. And then for our turn 2 we will draw into a Binding Mochi, which isn't super helpful for right now, but we can go ahead and put that Forest Seal Stone down. Now that we know they're not going to Lost Vacuum that off or anything, we can use it on this turn. We'll probably start with our Ultra Ball because we want to get our Pidgeot going. So we're not going to use this Binding Mochi right now. We want to keep the rest of the things. So we'll go ahead and get Pidgeot. We have a Rare Candy in our hand, which is very helpful. Otherwise we'd use Arven to get that, but we will still probably use Arven so that we can get to our Hydreigon. Actually, we won't need to because we have a Pidgeot that we can use to search as well. So we have several things we can search for. We can use Arven, we can use our Forest Seal Stone, we can use our Pidgeot. So we can do pretty much anything we want on this turn with all of these resources. And that's a pretty good setup for what you want to do. Again, not much of a game here because there was nothing set up on the other side. So we'll hop into a longer game in our next clip. And here we are in our full game. I believe we're going second to start out this game. This is pre-recorded just as a heads up and I'll be talking over it, but I do make a pretty critical mistake towards the end of this game that almost costs me. I think it's pretty funny, which is why I left it in there. And you'll see me kind of freeze for a second once I realize it. But we're starting out with a Pidgey. We also have a Rotom in our hand. So we'd love to put some more cards down like a Deino to start out. Looks like we're going to be playing some sort of Palkia deck, probably with a Greninja, maybe. I think that's the pretty common deck I've seen is either Palkia with Terapagos or Palkia with Greninja. And an Ursaluna being tossed. I'm sure they will get that back using either a Night Stretcher or something on later in the game. They're going to use their Squawkabilly, and they're going to mill through like half of their deck on this turn number 1. But yeah, for us, we have just about every supporter we can imagine. We'll have a Buddy-Buddy Poffin to be able to put some things down, and we have our Rotom V to draw cards after our first turn. So an okay setup. We'll have to try and figure out our energy situation, as well as how we're going to evolve on our turn 2. So Arven could help with that, or if we really get into trouble, maybe Iono to kind of reset our hand. But we're just going to wait for our opponent to select the Nest Ball Pokemon, which will just be a Froakie. So yeah, that's a Greninja deck, and they have a Duskull as well, so we'll have to watch out for that. With 330 damage or HP that I believe Hydreigon has, that's pretty much a subspace swell from Palkia plus a Duskull to knock me out, so we'll have to keep that in mind if they're going to be putting Duskulls down on their bench. But yeah, we'll get our Dinos going. We have our Rotom, and then what do we want to do for here? We can put some energy on the board with Crispin. think that's what we're gonna do. I forgot it's 2 different types of energy that you have to put down. So one goes on the Pokemon and one goes on your bench. We'll start with the Steel Energy for our hand. Deino's attacks all need 1 Dark Energy at least, so we'll start with that one just so we have 1 step ahead on our next turn. If we're able to get to a Hydreigon on our next turn, you know, we don't want to invest too much and put 2 energy on it, but we'll be, you know, 1 attachment away from an attack. We'll instant charge, get a Zweilous, which isn't bad for our second Deino, and an energy, so we are okay. We'll see if they're able to knock me out on this turn. I probably should have gone for another Pidgey here. I don't know if I had the option to, if that Nest Ball was there before or not, but it's looking like there's a pretty good chance this Pidgey gets knocked out, so really would have liked to kind of set up for that. They got rid of their own Pokestop, which is interesting. And they'll restart with Mew. So I believe Palkia wants to discard a couple energy so it can use its V-Star ability later on to bring them back. Probably power up a Greninja for its Barrage ability, or its move, I think, that does damage to your bench. So we'll start with Arven here so we can try and get evolved. Get a Rare Candy and a Forest Seal Stone since our Rotom is on the bench already, and then we'll do a quick prize check to make sure Neo Upper is in here. A little low on Dark Energy there, so that means you must have prized some. So we'll put our Forest Seal Stone down, and that way we have what we need to be able to get to our Pidgeot. So we want to get both a Pidgeot and a Hydreigon, which is why we're going to start with a Ultra Ball instead of just kind of searching that up with the Forest Seal Stone. And again, I'm not too worried about gusting at the current time. If we get behind, we can do that with a Prime Catcher or something, but we want to keep these other cards in our hand. So we'll get our Pidgeot and then be able to get going from there. So now we can still search up 2 cards to be able to evolve to our Hydreigon. So we're gonna want to work on that next. I think I was feeling bad about throwing that Zweilous away before, so we used our Super Rod there. I find myself not really using the Super Rod all too often, so I think that's why I didn't really mind using it so early in this game. A lot of times you'll want to address, you know, an energy issue with that, or get a very important Pokemon back, but I've played a bunch of games with this deck and I don't really often use that Super Rod. But we'll use Pidgeot's ability here to go ahead and get our Hydreigon. And then we're just going to need a Rare Candy from here, which is why we used Star Alchemy and the Forest Seal Stone to get that. Okay, so there goes Hydreigon. And it's a free retreat into that. I have a couple different energies I can use. I'm going to save that Dark Energy for a different Pokemon, but while we have the Steel, that can be used for both moves there. We'll retreat into it. And in the future, there are a lot of juicy targets for our Obsidian, but we'll just mill a couple cards now and try and make it difficult for them to get to anything else. So a couple Nest Balls, not a big deal. Ultra Ball could get in the way if they're trying to find Palkia V-Star or a Greninja. So, I mean, it was a fine couple of cards to discard, but it's not going to hurt them too bad. And they're down to 21 cards, so we could think about, you know, as they get closer to the end, if we want to just continuously mill their cards. They go with an Irida to probably get their Palkia V-Star, and then another item of some sort. I don't know if that'll be a Rare Candy to get the Dusknoir evolved, or a Greninja, honestly. I don't know that Greninja is the most helpful card in this match. I'm not weak to it. Its first move only does 170 damage and lets them search a card. Their second move will do damage to the bench, but then they have to discard energy. So that's a lot of investment to, you know, maybe only take out a Deino if they get to that spot in the game, or if I have it evolved, it's not really going to help them too much. So they're probably just going to focus on Palkia and Dusknoir in this game. Put down their Nest Ball to see what comes next. Another Duskull. So yeah, with Obsidian, we have plenty of targets here. We could take out 2 Duskull, we could get rid of their Greninja. I think if I were to hit the Mew, I'm a dark Pokemon with Hydreigon, so it might take that out, you know, do double damage, since I believe Mew is weak to dark. So that's a good way to take, you know, another 2 prize cards. I think that would win us the game if we had a way to gust into a Duskull. And then we could just hit the other Duskull with 130, put 130 on Mew, that would double. I think that's how it works. They're going to Prime Catcher me into a Rotom, into their Mew. Oh, that's free retreat. So they're just going to go back probably. So I don't know if they're just trying to take a couple prize cards here, or yeah, Star Portal will put energy probably on the Froakie. Yeah, this is interesting. I don't know that they really need to take out the Rotom right now instead of trying to do some damage to Hydreigon, which is probably what I would do. Or if they're just trying to stall and they're going to put Rotom in the active slot to make me go around it, which is why we have Pecharunt in the deck. So if we found our Pecharunt, we could just switch out. Hydreigon would be poisoned, which isn't too big of a deal. And then we could use our Binding Mochi, unless I got rid of our Binding Mochi, I don't remember. But they put Fez on the bench, which again could be a target. And when you use Obsidian with this deck, you kind of put your opponent on a bit of a timer. So if I put 130 damage on like a Fezandipiti or a Rotom or something like that, if they don't deal with the Hydreigon in the next move, if they don't get rid of it, and I still have all 4 energy sitting there, then the game is over. I'm able to take several prize cards at once. So not bad just to put some damage down if you have the chance. But go for their Dusknoir. And again, this is weird that they set that up, but Rotom is in the active slot, because I believe they would have enough damage to take out my Hydreigon, or maybe since I didn't overbench, they would be a little bit short. So we'll see if they even pop that Dusknoir, or if they just leave it for a future turn. In which case, a Binding Mochi, if I move that Dusknoir to the active slot, would give me enough damage to knock it out, because that would give me 170. But they just take out my Rotom, which again doesn't hurt me too much. It's 2 prize cards, but I probably wouldn't use that for the rest of the game anyways. We'll go ahead and Nest Ball, and I don't have my Pecharunt here, but we can Fezandipiti. Okay, we'll flip the script to get a couple more things like Counter Gain, which I'm not behind, so it doesn't super help at the moment. Then we have a couple of our supporters to go from here, so I could use Pidgeot to get my Neo Upper Energy and Obsidian. It looks like that's what I might go for here. All right, we'll grab that Neo Upper Energy. I probably should set up some other things. I don't know if I actually do. If I have another Deino or something in the deck that I could try and set up again, or in the future try and get a Night Stretcher to get one of those back if it gets knocked out. Yeah, but we have enough here for Obsidian. Again, I'm looking at their 9 cards left in their deck and seeing if I should just Crashing Headbutt, but I think I'd like to disrupt a little bit more than that. Okay, so we're going to do 130 to Palkia, which will put him in range to be knocked out from Crashing Headbutt. And then I was trying to think if I want to put it on the Mew or one of the Duskulls or what. So we can definitely knock out 2 of them with these 130. Again, I think if I had knocked out Mew here, I would have put them to 1 prize card, and I believe we saw a Blood Moon Ursaluna earlier on, so if they're able to Night Stretcher that back, then they have a free attack. And if they have 2 prize cards left, they at least have to spend an energy on that Blood Moon Ursaluna. So, you know, getting rid of the Mew didn't really do a lot for me, and it gave them, or put them down to 1 prize card. So that was Night Stretcher, could have been Blood Moon Ursaluna, and it was. So they have that in their back pocket. They would need to give it 1 energy to be able to do damage. I think it does 240 damage, so that plus a Dusknoir is plenty to take out my Hydreigon. But yeah, now that we only have, or need 2 prize cards to win the game, we can do that with an attack on Palkia, with an attack on Mew. So a couple different options we have here. I'll be able to flip the script with Fezandipiti. I think I was just checking to see if any energy was in the discard pile for a future turn that I could Night Stretcher back, because I'm trying to think of how to get energy onto Deino. Just waiting to see what direction we want to go here with my opponent. I mean, I think they have to do the Dusk Noir Palkia move. Another consideration is if I had brought them down to 1 prize card, then they wouldn't be able to use Dusk Noir to take me out. So that also probably was the right play to make, because then they don't really have a way to knock me out. You know, 240 damage from the Ursaluna doesn't do it in that case, so that's one thing I didn't think about until just now, is the right move was probably to take out that Mew, bring them down to 1 prize card. I'm also assuming that putting that 130 on Mew would be doubled because of the weakness. I'll need to read the Hydreigon card to see if that would actually double or if it doesn't listen to weakness. But we do get our Pecharunt here from the prize card that was taken by Dusk Noir, which is great. So that's our end game win condition, and where that funny situation comes up in just a moment. So now I'm going to switch to thinking, instead of having to evolve this Hydreigon, if I can just get this Pecharunt into play, get 2 energy on it, and then it'll do 300 damage at this point. Actually, no, sorry, because I have 1 prize card remaining, so it'll do 260, I think 240 maybe, so it does enough. All right, so I was happy to get that Dark Patch. As you can see, Pecharunt goes down. Flip the script just to see what else we can get. So what I do here, I see a Night Stretcher in my hand, and I go to get that energy out of the discard pile to attach. And that was my mistake, because the Dark Patch attaches it from your discard pile to the Pokemon. In my head, I thought I had more than 1 dark energy in there, even though I clearly saw that I just didn't. So now I have to think, how do I get the second energy? I can only attach 1, but I need to get another one into the discard pile to use my Dark Patch with it. So my brain kind of breaks here for a moment, thinking that I just messed this up and there's no way to get out of it. But luckily we have a Pidgeot, and Pidgeot can look up anything in our deck, and we do also have an Earthen Vessel. So as the timer starts to go down, we get there eventually. After I mill over all the cards in my head that are in my deck, look at them all individually, really admire them. And there it is. There's the Earthen Vessel. So we're able to put that, I didn't need to use that Night Stretcher there to get the energy out. We're going to use our Earthen Vessel to re-discard that energy so I can use Dark Patch, and then we'll have a couple energy from our deck back into our hand. And now we have what we need to get our Pecharunt in play to do the final damage to this Palkia. And I believe our opponent sees the writing on the wall here with my free retreat into Pecharunt and knows that we have the win, so they're going to concede the game. So that's the Hydreigon deck. It's a lot of fun. Again, very satisfying, where they're using Crashing Headbutt to get rid of a couple cards from your opponent's deck, or Obsidian to attack the bench and just kind of put them on a timer. Lots of cards in Surging Sparks to help you catch up from behind. Of course, we'll look for some more cards from Surging Sparks to use in the future, whether that's Pikachu or one of the other big cards that we've been seeing. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next video.